Hello and welcome back to the weekly waypoint where we are playing through the Wipeout series. We are now on Wipeout 3, the third and final entry in the PlayStation 1 trilogy. Of course, there was Wipeout 64 which preceded this, but that's basically Wipeout 2097 on the N64 as far as I'm aware. Apparently it just like mirrors track layouts and switches up locations, so we might go back and look at it at another date, but I don't think it's particularly important for this, for our purposes today. Lest you wonder, we are currently racing on the Venom class. This is the second slowest, I guess, class. I don't know how high it goes in this game, but it starts on Vector, which I'm pretty sure is a lower racing class than has ever been available so far. I did record a whole league of Vector races, and I just thought, it's a little slow. It's a little slow. You want it to be a little bit faster, don't you? I think I'm going to try and keep that the standard going forwards. So long as I don't have to do a whole bunch of shit to unlock it, I think we'll be starting with Vector League races in, you know, the different games for the sake of comparison. So yeah, Wipeout 3, I hadn't really played it until very recently, and I gotta say, it's the best looking game of the bunch in terms of a PlayStation 1 games, which I was not expecting. Compare this to Wipeout or Wipeout 2097, and you will see it is leagues ahead in just, you know, it's got hardly any draw on demand. You know, sometimes the racers ahead of me will pop in, sometimes the odd object or two will end up popping in, but for the most part, you could almost be tricked into believing that this was a remastered port for PC, right? Like, obviously there's some upscaling going on, but for the most part, this game just looks a lot better than its previous counterparts. Well, I say a lot better, but I actually have a bone to pick with it. In chasing better graphics, I think they also chased more realism, and from this point on, the Wipeout franchise started looking less kind of like neon and like, you know, dark backgrounds contrasting with bright neon like boost icons on the floor and ads and stuff. And it became a little bit more industrial, a little bit more brown and grey. And I do wish it had maybe kept some of that former neon kind of a style of look. That being said, this particular track I think looks fantastic. But yeah, with like, you know, downgrading the lowest class of speed as well, I feel like it just started to get a bit more realistic. It started to get a little bit more friendly, and while I'm all about approachability in games and stuff, I just think there's definitely a charm to the original two games in this series that were never quite recaptured. That being said, the later stuff is really good too. One quality of life addition I really love about this entry in the series: when you pick up a weapon, it now tells you what weapon it is. You don't have to learn the icons. Previously, if you heard like missile, it would be because someone behind you had picked up a missile. Now they've replaced it with danger, so you know that someone behind you has a weapon. And now when you pick up a missile, it says missile. So much nicer for just immediate comprehensibility. Also, as I mentioned in the previous weeks, the handling gets a little bit better each entry. The punishment for bumping into walls gets a little bit less severe with each entry, but also, as you can see, as you get higher up in the speed levels as well, it becomes a little bit more punishing like it used to be. I definitely noticed that when I was racing as Vector speed class, it was a lot more forgiving bumping into walls, and with Venom it started to feel a little bit more like 2097. Next week we will of course be jumping into Wipeout Fusion, the first and only PS2 title of the bunch. But as far as favourites goes, I think 2097 still holds the top spot of the games we've played so far for me. As for my week then, what have I been playing? Well, would it surprise you to hear that I've basically been mainlining Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail? And no, don't worry, I will not be giving any spoilers in this video either. I'm just going to tell you what I've done, as well as like my general impressions on how I feel about the MSQ. Like, I won't expand on any story details, but I'm literally just going to tell you if I liked it or not. So yeah, in other words, I finished the MSQ. I'm current. I'm level 100. I've got the to be continued thing in the top left of my screen. I'm now going to be working towards unlocking flying in all of the zones, working through the side quests, unlocking the optional dungeons, and starting on the raid series when that unlocks in a few weeks. The main thing I want to stress gameplay wise is how good Dragoon feels. I'm a Dragoon main, right? But I don't know, I started to feel like I wasn't a big fan of Dragoon as I started exploring other jobs, other classes. I unlocked Reaper, and I thought that was the most fun melee DPS class in the game. At least, I mean, you know, I literally just said it's like the second one I played, but even going forwards from that, I always really enjoyed Reaper, and I kind of always just do, if I'm doing like old raids and stuff, I always choose to do them on Reaper. And then, you know, I finished leveling up Red Mage and I was working on Samurai before the expansion hit, and I have dabbled with other jobs and classes too at lower levels. But something about the changes they made to Dragoon this expansion left it feeling so much more fun than it was before. Oh my god, I love Dragoon now. I didn't hate it before, but I just remember playing Reaper and being like, oh, this is better than Dragoon. It's hard to go back to Dragoon now. I think I'm having more fun on Dragoon now than I'm having on Reaper right now. They haven't changed a whole lot, don't get me wrong, but they've, for those of you in the know, they've changed Nastrond, so instead of it being like a cycle of, you know, it takes a long time to kind of like unlock the ability to change Gear Skoggle into Nastrond, and then you use it, and then you use Stardiver, and then you wait again. It's more like you unlock it more frequently now, and Nastrond has 3 charges per unlock. Plus, Stardiver at level 100 gets the ability to transform into another follow-up ability, and is it Dragonfire Dive or something? The AoE kind of jump ability also has the ability to transform into another ability. So Dragoon now is a lot more about following up, and these are all off global cooldown abilities, meaning that you can kind of weave them in between your normal rotation. So I can be like, for instance, these aren't my key bindings, but if it was as simple, I'd be like hitting, instead of 1, 2, 3, I'd be hitting 1, control 1, 2, control 1, 3, control 2, 4, control 2, 5, control 2, 6, control 3, you know, like, it's just more busy in a fun way. At the same time, though, it's simpler, and so I can't tell if they've just, like, made bosses a little bit easier this expansion. I don't think they have. I think what they've done is they've made Dragoon less of a headache to play while you're also trying to learn a new boss dance at the same time, and boss mechanics. And so I think it's freed up just the right amount of brain space for me personally to spend on learning bosses and reacting to things and encounters, meaning I've been dying so much less than I did in Endwalker in dungeons and trials. And it's so satisfying because every time, I doubt this is a rare thing to do, but every time I unlock a brand new dungeon, I run through it with NPCs instead of queuing for it. Every time after that, I'll queue for it, but, you know, I do it with NPCs for the first time. And the thing with doing dungeons with NPCs, for those of you who aren't aware, is if you die on a boss, if you wipe, you know, the whole party just wipes instantly, so it's a lot more about you making it through it. You can't kind of like floor tank your way to victory. I'm not saying it's harder, because there's also other things that make up for that. You can kind of like, if you can't figure out the mechanics, you can by and large just keep an eye on what the NPCs are doing and follow where they go and stay safe, so it kind of like equalizes, I would say, on the difficulty spectrum there. But it's just been so rewarding. I don't think I've ever died more than once in a dungeon on my first try through, and those few dungeons where I didn't die at all, and those few trials where I didn't die at all, oh my god, I felt like I was so good at the game. This must be how Dark Souls players feel playing Dark Souls, and by the way, that's kind of, it reignited my desire to learn how to play Souls-likes, just saying. It is basically the perfect difficulty for me personally, and I couldn't be happier, because I was definitely getting a little bit frustrated in Endwalker, constantly dying. I remember feeling really disheartened during the Pandemonium raids, and, you know, maybe raids are a step up in difficulty, and I'm gonna, you know, notice that again in Arcadian, but I think I'll probably be fine. So yeah, really happy with Dragoon. As for really kind of like top level non-spoiler thoughts about the MSQ, yeah, it was fun. It was really good. Obviously, this is the first new expansion after wrapping up a multi-expansion story arc, and I was initially really worried about that, because that smacks of Battle for Azeroth to me, which I really did not enjoy. It's so hard to jump a shark and then be like, wasn't that cool? Now we're not jumping any sharks this time around, but please continue to be invested in what we're doing. And yet they managed to tell a story that still felt like a, not a reset, but definitely like a, okay, we're going and doing something else now, that still ended up going places. And that's literally all I'm going to say about that. It's not going to end up being one of my favorite story expansions, and yet it still touched me emotionally. I actually posted a Blue Sky post giving a ranking of my least favorite to favorite story MSQs, I guess. And you know, I don't know if that means it includes patch content. I'm just thinking of like, when I think of an expansion, the story I think of in that expansion. So Heavensward would probably be to like 3.3, you know, that kind of a thing. And so Realm Reborn is at the bottom, Stormblood is above that, and then I've put Dawntrail above that, and that is then followed by Heavensward, Endwalker, and Shadowbringers being my favourite. Now that might like cause some concern for people who haven't played through the expansion yet, but let me tell you, Stormblood is like, I enjoyed Realm Reborn, and Stormblood is a really bloody good story that I have fond nostalgia for thinking back on it, so ranking it above Stormblood is high praise. It introduced characters that I ended up really enjoying, and I'm really excited to see where the story goes next over the next few patches. If we're doing that thing where we're doing like 3 patches to like continue / do some epilogue story stuff here, and then like the next 3 patches to set up, or if we're going to spend 6 whole patches here. I don't mind either way. I really like these zones, and most of all, I've never really cared about like yellow side quests, but I'm actually really excited to clear the maps of yellow side quests and just like spend some time leveling alternate classes by going and doing these little side stories and stuff, because I really like all the little hubs and the little cultures we saw and that kind of thing. So yeah, I have nothing but glowing things to say about Dawntrail, and I'm really excited that I've finished the MSQ now, because as much as I was enjoying it, I was also very much in the realm of like, okay, but I wanna spend more time leveling Viper now, I wanna go unlock Pictomancer, I wanna, you know, do all of these side activities, which my brain didn't really make space for throughout most of the leveling process. There was an attempt at the start, but yeah. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about Dawntrail, I think. In other news, by the way, I am continuing my playthrough through Final Fantasy X. Wow, I just stumbled over that sentence as I realised that, of course, you probably already know that, because yesterday you will have seen my upload of Volume 1 of Adventures in Spira. Now, of course, if the adventure takes us away from Spira for an extended length of time, I'm going to feel very silly, but looking up where the majority of Final Fantasy X story takes place could end up being a spoiler, so I'm just winging it and hoping for the best. I'm like 7 or 8 hours in. Again, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Like, people kind of like make fun of the voice acting, or I guess the voice direction, and there's reasons for why it is the way that it is. I have heard them. That being said, yes, even I, as you will have seen in a video, am stopping and laughing and being like, that's ridiculous, that's weird, that's not natural, that's Uncanny Valley. At the same time, though, I really like the story arc that Tidus is going through. Like, I was not expecting to care about this character, but I do, so yeah, fingers crossed. Here's hoping I'll be able to stick with Final Fantasy X till the end, and the attention span goblins do not take that desire away from me. I think one thing I've noticed is when I get really super duper into Final Fantasy XIV, I always end up wanting to play other Final Fantasy entries at the same time. So for instance, obviously right now I'm really into Dawntrail. I've ended up playing 10 and buying 9 and 12 as well, and part of me is also going 12. Luckily I can ignore that for now, but also like I never finished Final Fantasy 3, which I wanted to do before I got to Final Fantasy 4, which is the one I'm really interested in, also 6. Also, I've been listening to the 7 remake soundtrack again, specifically the One Winged Angel remix, which I really like, even though I've never got to that point in the game. If there was one thing I knew about Final Fantasy 7 pre-remake, it was the Sephiroth theme song. I think it's pretty iconic. So yeah, part of me wants to go back and play 7 and continue playing 7 remake, and also you hear crazy things about 8's story as well. And you know, I am looking at 9 and being like, people really like 9 as well, and there's a Zidane wind-up minion you got for pre-ordering, or maybe just getting Dawntrail, I don't remember which. And I think he's like a Viper, I might be wrong, or maybe he's the inspiration for the Viper class, I don't know. But yeah, basically my brain is shooting off in all kinds of directions regarding Final Fantasy, and of course lamenting the fact that I cannot exist in a hyperbolic time chamber where I just sit, do not age, and am able to play through all of them sequentially without worrying about anything else. I do wonder, if the ability to like remove aging and, you know, a limited amount of time was available to me, if those weren't factors, would I still have issues with my attention span? I think I would, you know. Like, I think obviously partially it's to do with like, oh, but I want to see what this is about while I have time in this mortal coil. But I think a larger part of it is I'm doing this thing, and now I'm curious about this other thing, and I've got to see it right now. Speaking of time, though, ours is pretty much up. I don't want to spoil anything here, but I don't think I'm going to make it to the end of this race. So thank you very much for watching this episode of A Weekly Waypoint. I will be back next week with Wipeout Fusion, and in the meantime, take care, and I will see you in whatever I make next.